He couldn't hang with my freestyle. 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 He couldn't hang with my freestyle.
Hey everybody, this is Chris Crazy House, and I want to welcome you to a new episode of Chris Crazy House Fan Art Freestyle. And it is Friday the 13th, so I want to do another tribute to the Friday the 13th movies. Anyone who knows me personally knows that I'm a big fan of horror films, and I grew up during the slasher era of horror films, so back during the 80s and the early 90s, I was really into watching a lot of the slasher films like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, the sequels to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween sequels, and everything else like that. So I was very much into that, and even like the low budget slashers like, Slumber Party Massacre and The Prowler and all that other good stuff that came out back then. Over the years, I've liked doing different tributes to horror movies. So I've done some zombie short films in animation form. I've done some artwork that, gives tributes to horror films. And I've actually done a lot of tributes and fan art to the Friday the 13th series already. If you remember way back in 2013, and it was actually on Friday the 13th back then, I did a picture of Jason holding one of the camp counselors from Crystal Lake, and he was attacking her in the woods, in the dark woods, trying to get her with his butcher knife. Then years later, I did another tribute where it was little Jason. So Jason, when he was a child under Crystal Lake, and he's, reaching his hands out to come in, like, kind of grab you or whatever. I even did a sketch for, I think this was for DeviantArt years ago, where it's like two of the female camp counselors like getting undressed in a bathroom, and Jason is behind them. So I never finished this one, so it only turned out as a sketch, but I might complete that one at some later time or whatever, if I have time between all the other projects I'm working on and work and stuff like that. But, today I wanted to do a tribute, since it is Friday the 13th and it actually takes place in October. So during this spooky season of October and fall and Halloween, I love this time of year. It's my favorite time of year. And I wanted to do another tribute to Jason Voorhees. So this time I'm going to be drawing him kind of busting through a door, grabbing one of the camp counselors. And if you notice, in my other depictions of Jason, I've tried to use the different versions of him from different films. So the image that I did way back when in 2013, it was Jason from Friday the 13th Part 3, the 3D one. So this is where he's kind of big and hulking. Little Jason, obviously, is from the very first Friday the 13th movie. And the one that I'm working on today is more of Jason from Final Friday. So his clothes are a little bit darker, and you can see that he actually has the axe wound from Part 3 in his mask and the wound in his head. So this was this was supposed to be the final chapter. This was supposed to be the last of the Friday the 13th films, but we all know they went on to make several more after this. But this was supposed to be the one where Jason finally dies. And, so I want to kind of replicate that one. And this is kind of like, this is my favorite of all of them, as it turns out, just because I like the cast and I also like the stunt man that plays Jason in this movie. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to be drawing today in this fan art freestyle. So you can sit back, relax, and watch me draw and talk about my history with the Friday the 13th films. And, you can go ahead and let me know in the live chat, or you go ahead and let me know in the comments. Let me know which version of Jason was your favorite, or maybe what Friday the 13th movie was your favorite. Or maybe you were into a different slasher series from back then? Go ahead and let me know in the comments section while I'm doing this drawing. So let's get started on drawing Mr. Jason here from the Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, even though it never was the final chapter. And we're going to be drawing him busting through the door and grabbing the camp counselor by her hair and getting ready to do some work. Let's go. So while I'm putting in the pencils for this project, let's talk about Friday the 13th, shall we? I'll just let you know my experience with this franchise is obviously because I was very young when it first started. I did not see the first few movies, so I didn't get into the series until Part 7. So I watched Part 7, and that's the episode where Jason is fighting the psychic girl. So that's the girl that has psychic powers, kind of like Carrie, and even a lot of people refer to that as Jason versus Carrie. And that's the first time, I think, where Kane Hodder actually is under the mask as Jason as well. So this Jason was more of like a zombie-like Jason, where he was just kind of like immortal. You really couldn't kill him through conventional means, and you can actually see when his mask comes off, you can see his skull, and if you look at his back, you can see his spine. Very good makeup in that movie, by the way. But that was the first one I ever saw way back when. And I remember after seeing that, that's when I kind of went back and watched some of the other Friday the 13th films that I had missed out on. So obviously starting with 1 and then going on to 2. And there are certain things I liked about both of them. Like those 2 films, like 1 and 2, are more about the atmosphere. I feel like it really didn't get silly until Part 3, which was the quote-unquote 3D one. That's when some of the kills got really ridiculous and off the wall, and you want to laugh at it. But the first 2, I guess they were still trying to maintain some of that seriousness, and it was more about the suspense and making it like a thriller and the jump scares and stuff like that. But once you got to 3 and then 4, that's when it got ridiculous. And you know, I love 3 and 4 because that's when Jason first got his hockey mask. If you watch the first 2 films, he actually, well, the first one he's a kid, and then the second one he's wearing a bag over his head. And I don't know what happened between 2 and 3, but somehow Jason got a hold of some steroids or some HGH or something like that, because he's huge in Part 3 compared to how he was in Part 2. And you know, the character got bigger and more of just like a force of nature in 2 and 3 and 4, and then he supposedly dies in Part 4, but then somehow the character winds up coming back as like a zombie. And for those who are familiar with the lore, you know, in Part 5, there's not even a real Jason in there. It's like an imposter. They tried to change it up a little bit in that one, and that Part 5 is one of the weirdest films I've ever seen, period, much less like horror or slasher films. It's just a strange film. It's funny as hell, though. Like, if you have a weird sense of humor or a dark sense of humor, go watch Part 5. I think that one's called, is that one called The New Beginning? I think that's what that one's called. Go watch Friday the 13th Part 5. That shit is hilarious. Go watch that if you ever want a good laugh, because it's ridiculous. But yeah, then they have some of the other ones that it just keeps going, gets more and more silly as time goes on. And there are different versions of Jason, it seems like, in every one. Not it's the same character, but he goes through different transformations. Like, once at first he's just a dude with a bag on his head, then he's like this unstoppable force, then he's supernatural where he's like a zombie, then you even get later on to where he's a cyborg. Then Jason goes to outer space, you know, years later, Jason X. So these movies just kept going and kept jumping the shark and getting more and more ridiculous as time went on. So that's been my experience with the Friday the 13th films. You can let me know in the comments section, like, what is your favorite one, or what is your favorite version of Jason. But I've always, just enjoyed the films for how silly they are. I don't take them seriously at all. I know some people are grossed out by horror films or slasher films. To me, they're funny. It's almost like a kind of weird commentary or satire or just comedy in general. It's so over the top and ridiculous. You can't take them seriously, and that's why I just watch them to enjoy them and laugh at them in that way. And I wouldn't take them too seriously if I were you. Speaking of Halloween and horror, and if you are a fan of the spooky season, you have to go out and get my coloring book, Cute Little Monsters. It is one of the great items to have for this time of year. And not just for you, but for your youngins. Okay, so if you got some kids out there who love having fun with trick-or-treating or just doing coloring books and activity books, go ahead and get this coloring book. It is available on Amazon.com, and I think this is a great purchase for this time of year. It is a coloring book, an activity book. It contains lots of fun and cute pictures of these little monsters, like a little miniature version of Frankenstein or Count Dracula or the Mummy. It has lots of great activities like connect the dots, tic-tac-toe, picking which monster is different, or mazes, word searches. So lots of fun stuff that we all remember from doing when we did our activity books when we were kids. Or if you're a collector of things like Highlights magazine, has all that great stuff in this book. It even has some pages where you can use your own imagination and draw your own little creature in the page. So lots of fun stuff. It is the perfect gift for this time of year. And once again, it is available on Amazon. I'll provide the links in the description box as well as in the comments section. So go get Cute Little Monsters today. Alright folks, so here we are, the final piece from my Friday the 13th fan art for this year, and I will give my critique of my artwork. So let's take a look at it here. So I wanted to keep this a very simple piece, so this is very simple vector art in my own style that I've kind of created over the last few years or so. And once again, the theme was I wanted to have Jason from Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, busting through the door and also kind of breaking the window and grabbing the girl by the hair and getting ready to, take her out. My whole thing was I wanted to make the lighting very simple. So it's raining at nighttime, just like it was in Friday the 13th Part 4. It was a rainy night on that episode. And, the only light that you could see really is the lightning strike kind of, illuminating Jason and his victim. So that's what I was kind of going for with this simple vector piece here. And originally, in my original thumbnail, I had Jason grabbing the girl, like his hand that's going through the window was actually grabbing her by the arm or by her wrist. But I realized I had kind of done that already in a previous Friday the 13th fan art, so I was like, let me do something different here, and I decided to do her hair. Now, this kind of like a double way of helping me because I wasn't exactly sure what to do with the character's hair. I know I didn't want her to be blonde, but I was trying to think of like what 80s hairstyle I could go for, and I kind of figured out an 80s hairstyle, but I kept it very simple, and I wanted to make, I decided to like have him grab her by her hair. So he has a handful of her hair, and and you can kind of see she's, struggling to get away. You also can see that she has some marks on her, and her clothes are ripped, and she has some like slashes from like maybe trying to escape from him before. Maybe she like cut herself on something, or dragged herself like through some woods in the forest or something like that. So just kind of adding a little bit more to the art piece to kind of like tell the story. This is the girl that's trying to survive the best she can, but she still can't get away from Jason, and this is like the final attack where he finally does catch up with her, and once again he breaks his hand through the window, grabs her by the hair, and has his butcher knife in the other hand. As far as Jason himself, I think it looks good. The only thing I would say is, as a critique to myself, is we all know that Jason is deformed underneath his mask, and I was trying to kind of get that because his eyes are weird, like, and it actually changes between movies, but his eyes are kind of droopy, because he's deformed underneath his mask. Like he's always been deformed even since he was a child, but even more so now, like his eyes are like kind of droopy, but I still want to get that look of excitement in his eyes when he's about to stab his victim. So I was trying to get that, but also still maintain the idea that he's deformed under there and his eyes are kind of droopy. So that kind of looks weird to me now that I'm looking at it, but I'm not sure if people will get that or not. I'm sure if you're a Friday the 13th fan, you understand that he's deformed under there and his eyes are kind of messed up. Like, actually, if you actually look at the original makeup of Jason, like one eye is actually lower than the other. Like his face is very deformed under there. But that's what I was trying to go for with his eyes, the way his eyes look. Just kind of add a little bit more excitement to his eyes and not just have them be completely droopy, because then it looks like a sleepy person or a person who's drowsy is attacking somebody. I wanted to make him more excited than that, right? Because he is a very animated character. But you see the look of horror on the girl's face. Her eyes are kind of wide open at the moment of truth here, and the lightning is striking. And what I would probably add more onto this piece is I would make Jason a little bit more wet, like maybe add some more highlights or maybe some dripping water to make it look like he just came out of the rainstorm or whatever. So that's probably be like the other details I would add to this. But overall, I think it's decent, and was able to pull this off in a very short amount of time, just within the same day as Friday the 13th. So I think this came out pretty well. You folks can let me know how you feel about it and what you think about this piece in the comment section. Let me know what you think of my other Friday the 13th artworks with Jason. Let me know what's your favorite version of Jason in the comments. I very much like to hear your opinions on that. And make sure you go ahead and pick up that coloring book by me, Cute Little Monsters, which is available on Amazon right now. And you can go pick it up, or you can order it from me and I will send it to you in time. Okay? So anyway, folks, thank you all for joining me here on this fan art freestyle, and I will see you on the very next one. The next one I'm going to be doing some Sonic the Hedgehog / Mario 3 crossovers, so be prepared for that. And we'll be seeing you next time on Chris Crazy House's Fan Art Freestyles. Make sure you go ahead and like this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more of my art and animation videos. Anyway, folks, this is Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.